Hello and welcome back everyone to Master Blender 3D with Wild West environments. And in the last lesson, we ended up getting ourselves the top section sorted. Now we're going to continue on with this section at the bottom. And I reckon we can just do a little bit of the setup for the wagon. So since this is still a gray box part, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it basic. I'd firstly like to go ahead and fix up this person over here floating. We can click Alt and G, which is going to reset the transformations. This only works if you haven't applied the transformations. And by that, some of you might know that Control and A has apply setup. So if we end up applying location, we're going to have ourselves the transformation of the character, which can be seen if we press N. We're going to be able to basically hide and unhide, and if we have the person selected, we can see the location is going to be offset, and this is the location that tells where the character is essentially. And if we reset these to 0 or click Alt G, we're just going to move this to be at the value of 0. So that's all it's doing, the setup. And the reason I want to do it is just to have this on the ground. This, what I mentioned, is going to come in handy for the wagon itself. Before doing that, I'd like to move the sun a little bit. So I'm going to go on to the shader and I'm going to go on to the world setup. Rotation for the sun, I'm just going to move it so we could have a little bit more of lighting coming to this section over here. Now, let's go ahead and start setting ourselves up with the said wagon. If we have a look at the reference, we'll notice that the wagon itself is in the corner over here, and it's just a little bit higher than a human being. So imagine the character climbing in, being able to sit inside and whatnot, and it's just going to be quite nicely set up for this human reference height. So another thing is going to be its shape. It's, as you can see, is more of a squarish type of a shape. We can start with that and work ourselves from there. All right. To start off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cube like so. I'm going to reset it. I'm going to delete this cube and I'm going to reset the 3D cursor. So Shift and S, cursor to world origin. So it's going to put it at the very base like so. Then I'm going to create a mesh cube like so. And I'm just going to move it upwards just to see in regards to the height. And move it to the side. I think this height might be quite all right. Just going to check from the top. I am going to make this a little bit bigger in regards to its length. So S and Y, and just extend it a little bit like so. And as a starting point, all we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's nice shape and it's recognizable as a gray box. So this is floating. The reason being is that we do want to have some wheels. If we have a look at a reference, the one to the side over here, we'll notice that we do have the wheels, but the one on the front is going to be held up by a rock. Either way, we do need to have that main box shape to be slightly above ground, meaning that we do need to just have the base of it slightly just floating in the air. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just wondering if this is not too big, and I think overall it is too big because we elevated this. We're going to make this smaller, just scaling it down a little bit. I'm going to click 7 just to see how it looks like from the top, compare it to our reference, and let's have a look. I think all in all, this is a reasonable size. Maybe needs to be a little bit elongated, so the width is a little bit going to be wider. And in terms of the setup, it should be quite a bit lower actually, like this. I think that's quite all right. I'm going to grab the top a little bit and just pull it upwards just a little bit, like so. All right, so now we have the nice base of a cube. Now I'm going to have a final look in regards to the shape and maybe make it just a little bit small in this area, like so. Probably something like this. And if I want to apply the scale, we can still see the menu by clicking N, that the scale over here is now different. If I was to make it the same, it's going to just give us the normal cube. But because we were scaling this in object mode, we are going to have transformations, scale, and rotation being applied on top of the primitive cube. The reason this is important to know is because if I was to edit this cube in edit mode by just moving these faces around like so, you'll notice that if I was to go back onto object mode, these scale dimensions are going to be exactly the same. Now, the main thing why this is important is because if we want to use modifiers, if we want to use something like bevel, for example, as well, it's going to change the way they interact with the object, because the transformations of a mesh gets applied after the fact that they're being used. And what I mean by that is if, let's say, we want to have a curve at the top of this object, we're going to go on to edit mode. We're going to click 2 to go on to edge selection, select upper section like so, click Ctrl B, and we'll notice that although this is looking quite fine like so, if I was to select all 4 faces and try to upscale it just like that, we'll notice that it's giving us a bevel that's going to be closer, more pushed at the front. The reason being is that, well, the scale is not proportional to the cube. We can probably see it a little bit better if we had a cube more like this. And if I was to do it, we can now see that it's giving us more of a roof type. We don't want this in this particular case. What we do want is we want to make sure that we have always more of a consistent type of a modifier. So in this case, we want to simply fix the scaling issue over here. We're going to click Ctrl and A and apply only the scale. The reason we're only applying the scale is when we click on this, it's going to reset it to 1, 1, 1. The reason we only want to apply the scale is because when we're done with the setup, so right now, for example, we have the basic cube, we can click R, Y, maybe have it a little bit rotated towards this side because the wheel is missing, RZ rotated a little bit towards this side like so. So we're going to have a nice position of the setup. Once we're done with the gray box, we can reuse this as a base setup by resetting the entire rotations and whatnot. We can click Alt R and Alt G, which is going to, by clicking Alt R, we're going to apply, or not apply, we're going to reset the rotation transform. And by clicking Alt G, we're going to apply the location transform. And why that is important is because this is going to give us back onto the default setup of the world as we had it originally, except for the scale, that is, because we applied it and we've not reset it. If we do want to apply the scale, we can click Alt and S. It's not going to do anything because we did have it applied already beforehand. Anyways, the reason we want to make sure we're setting it up like this and not any other way is because once we have it set up nicely and in the right position, what we can do is, if we want to, we can make a duplicate out of this. We can reset the motion, the location and rotation. Then we can do a symmetrical type of work. So for example, we can add wheels in this particular case. If I was just to move it upwards a little bit, at this point, it doesn't really matter because we are in the right spot of the world. We can go ahead and add cylinder like so. Just put it off to the side, just like that. Move it a little bit higher and reposition it just like that. Of course, a little bigger, so it would be touching the ground. Maybe something like this. It's quite nice. Let's thin it out. Again, this is only for a gray box, but it's nicer to see the overall shape setup. Maybe I'll just put it off a little bit to the front. If we want, of course, we can just work just on this piece. I'm going to select both of these, the main cube, and holding shift, the wheel. And then I'm going to click the question mark or the slash that we have next to the shift on the right side of the keyboard, which is going to isolate our view. By clicking again, we can go out of the isolation mode. And this is really nice when we want to just work on simple objects to make sure we don't get confused with the items in the scene. Anyways, afterwards, we can go ahead and just simply duplicate this wheel like so. And right now, what I'm going to do is just to keep it simple, I'm going to select both of them, click Shift D, GX, move it off to the side, and that's how easy it is to just get a basic shape. For this cube over here, although this is still a gray box, it's still nice to have a nicer base setup. So I'm going to get the shape that we have at the top, a little bit that extra curve that we see over here. We're going to select both sides just like that. We're going to hit Control B to bevel. And whilst we're beveling, we're going to use our mouse wheel to increase the topology. And this is going to give us this setup. Of course, at the bottom left-hand corner, we can change this tab over here. So increase the segments, for example, to 6. We're going to get ourselves a nicer base to work with. I think for now, that's going to be more than enough for a setup. Yeah, you know what? I think I will change this up a little bit to make sure that we have some hollow section on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on a edge loop, so Control R, but that's not going to give us an edge loop that we want. The reason being is that we have an n-gon topology. This right here in the front means that we have more than 4 faces. If it has more than 4 faces, you can see the yellow line doesn't go over it, and that's exactly why. So we're going to fix that real quick. We're going to click 1. We're going to select one of the vertices at the very bottom. Going to hold Shift, select the other one on the other side, click J, and that's going to join them two together. So this way, when we click Control R, we'll see that the line now goes across. Of course, we'll do the same at the back as well, just to make sure we have a nice consistency. And again, the reason we're doing this is simply now that we have our setup like this, we can create ourselves an edge loop just like that. I'm going to select all of these faces like so, click, and the ones on the top as well. So something like this, click I, and that's going to inset. Oh, sorry, I'm going to double click I. There we go. And that's going to inset the setup just like this. Very basic, very simple type of a shape. By double clicking I, it just means that we have the individual piece ticked on over here. And afterwards, we're going to just delete the faces. So we get something like this, a basic shape of the setup. I'm also going to delete the wheel at the front, so we know what the hell is going on with our setup. Then I'm going to hit Shift and A, create ourselves a cube, and put a little bit of a base so we would know what is going on with the setup. This, again, is just real quick, real sketchy and messy way of doing it. So we would know what we're working on with the setup. I'm not going to focus on the proportions of how big, how thick the frame is at the moment, nothing like that. I just want to make sure that we have a very basic shape, a silhouette that's going to help us identify what this piece is. And yeah, this should be all right. Then afterwards, I'm going to select one of them. I'm going to hit Shift D, R, Z, 90, and then SX, scale it down, lower this down a little bit. And this way we know where our wheel goes. So something like this. I think that's quite all right. Yeah, that's quite all right. Just going to make it bigger like this, so the axis is visible. Going to make the wheels move out a little bit like so. and just have them stick like this. Not worried about them being in center or anything of the sort. Just making sure that we have something to work with. After we're done with it, you'll notice that all of these items are separate pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the everything within object mode whilst this piece is isolated. So again, just selecting everything for this piece. Then I'm going to hold shift and select the base item. So that's the main cube that we have. The reason being is that we want to make sure that the transformation that we're going to be applying is going to be applied onto that same origin point of the cube. Otherwise, it's not going to work in the way I'm going to show you basically. So once we hold shift and select this last piece, we'll notice that it glows orange instead of that darker orange highlight. We're then going to right click, set origin to, oh, sorry. we're then going to click Control and J like so. And there we go. It's one single piece. Now we can click the dash icon to go out of isolation mode. I'm going to select this. We're going to select the cube, and then whilst holding shift, we're going to click on the wagon that we created. And then we're going to click Control L and link object data. So that way, as you can see, we're going to get ourselves a setup that's placed directly in the location that we want. And I think that's pretty good. So now we can just delete that duplicate over here. And we're going to have ourselves this setup, which by the way, we can still work on. We can come back whenever we want by clicking Alt G, Alt R. And that's just going to, again, reposition it to be completely centered and nicely set up for symmetry work. So that's the reason why we're doing it like this. Perhaps the scale is a little bit too big now that I'll look at it. Maybe I'll just scale it down like so. And click Control A, apply scale, only the scale. We still have these transformations. And I think that's quite all right. I think I'll just maybe slightly readjust this so the wheels are actually touching like so. And let's see where the position is within the setup. So what we want is we want this to kind of break off the side wall over here. So I'm going to go ahead and do just that somewhere around here. I think that's quite all right. Maybe a little bit off to the side, just like that. Let's ignore the human collision. And we're going to quickly create a rock just to make sure that it's not just floating. And we'd remember that there is, in fact, something that needs to be placed over here. I think that's quite all right to do. I don't really care about this rock positioning. We're going to be setting it up afterwards anyways. Let's just make sure we place something and we have ourselves this type of a setup. I think that's quite all right. And just to make it nicer, since we have some nice bevels on the side, we can just right click Shade Auto Smooth and we don't need to worry about it. I just didn't like those flat faces that we otherwise see over here. You see over here. So that's why we're doing it like this. All right, I think that's it for this lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be seeing you in a bit.